Well, hey, it was Wednesday morning, December 25th, and under the tree, there was a good chance that Santa brought you Transformers, Pound Puppies, G.I. Joe, Rainbow Brite, or the Atari 5200. It was the start of Ronald Reagan's second term, the wreckage of the Titanic was located, USA for Africa recorded We Are the World, and no one liked New Coke. But of course, the biggest thing was Marty McFly went Back to the Future. Today we're going to discuss The Year in Christmas 1985. If you haven't checked out my latest video, I catalog all the Christmas movies and televisions that aired that year, and I brought a few special guests to discuss The Year in Christmas. So why don't we meet them? Hey guys, welcome to the Christmas Summit podcast. We're going to talk about Christmas 1985. So let me introduce each one of you guys. So making his debut on my channel is Tim from 80s Flick Flashback podcast, discussing 80s flicks, memories, scenes, and stories about the movie. Tim, I loved your discussion on Masters of the Universe. I think I messaged you about that. That movie is dear to my heart, and of course that featured Gerry, because Gerry's on everyone's podcast, and and I know it's not a Christmas movie, but I love that movie, and I wanted to join that conversation so bad, and because I'm such a fan. And I don't say goodbye, I say good journey. Welcome, Tim.
There you go.
Welcome, Tim.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. It's gonna be
no problem.
Fun time.
So, making his second appearance, Mike from podcast Advent Calendar House. The podcast is a salute to all holiday specials, but mostly the Christmas ones. Mike, I jump around on a lot of people's podcasts. I just listened to your discussion on the Wonder Years episode, A Very Cut-Lip Christmas. Yes. So, you know who the worst person on the planet is?
Who's the worst person on the planet?
Kevin Arnold. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, you're absolutely right. He's the worst. That's what makes the show enjoyable.
Yeah.
Kevin
Arnold's the worst.
No problem.
No,
I am very excited to be preoccupied with 1985.
Cool. And the guy on everybody's podcast, as I mentioned, and my YouTube channel, because I think Gerry's been on. This is your 6th or 7th time. Gerry from Totally Rad Christmas. Yeah, I know. He's on a lot. It was gnarly during the Christmas in the 80s. He's got it covered. Gerry, I really enjoyed that episode where you discussed The Last Starfighter. You guys had some really insightful guests on that episodes.
That's right. I think 2 of them are here, actually. So. It was fun. I do remember that Masters of the Universe episode on Tim's show, and I think I talked way too much. So I apologize for that, but I have a lot of opinions about He-Man. So.
Hey, I did say that you were the Master of the Universe guru, and I was not wrong, because you had a point about just about everything that we discussed. So I had the right person on my show. No,
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Not sorry at all. Not sorry at all.
So we're not here to just talk about Masters of the Universe, the movie, but it's 1985. So let's chat. So I was 10 years old in 1985, and if you do the math, next year's going to suck for me. But I remember that. But I remember that year well, and I believe this is the year that I got a ton of G.I. Joe playsets. So how old were you guys, and what do you remember about 1985? Gerry?
Yeah, it's like, who goes first?
Yeah. So I was 5 years old. I had for Christmas that year, I was almost 6, and I remember I got the Matchbox Voltron. So it was I think 16 inches high. It was die-cast metal. The heads shot out. They were like spring-loaded. It was the coolest. It was amazing. And the only gift that I always say on my show that I liked better was when I got Castle Grayskull in 1984. So those are like the 2 that stand out. But yeah, Voltron was like huge. So I remember that Christmas. That's one of the ones that stands out in all of my memories. And it was just a great time. So I still have a picture of me opening that and my brother opening like his little toy cash register, and I'm just looking at him like, "Oh, that's what you got?" Like, I got Voltron. Sorry, guy.
My Voltron is in my toy cabinet right next to me, so I still have it. I saved it. My mom saved it, and then she was gonna let my nephew play with it, and I was like, nope. And and so even though I had to share it with my brother, I've taken possession of it. It is now mine. So,
Nice.
but I had that exact same one. So, Mike, what do you remember about 1985?
Not a lot. I was trying to find some old photos from that Christmas, and the only one I could find, it was a picture of me and my brother in matching Sesame Street pajamas. I was also
Nice.
5 years old in 1985, and these were the one-piece kind with the feet that you zipped up. Loved those.
Yes.
But I don't have any other pictures of this for some reason. The only thing I can think of, because I was thinking back, all right, what toys came out in 1985 that I knew I got that year and not the year before or the year after or anything? The only one that I could come up with was there was this robot called Casey, and he was a cassette player. It was like Teddy Ruxpin, but a robot. So that's the one that I had. It wasn't as cool as Teddy Ruxpin, but I got Casey the robot, and it was cool looking, so...
I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't think I know what that is. But yeah, that's cool. So Tim, what do you remember about 1985?
1985, I had just turned 11, so that makes me the oldest person here, which I guess is okay. I don't remember specifically what I got that year, but like kind of thinking about that time, I was definitely heavy into G.I. Joe during that time. Still collecting Star Wars. Star Wars was like my first collection of toys. So, but I think this was the Christmas, if I've got this one right, it's either this one or 84, where I think my mom had bought a bunch of G.I. Joe action figures from like the Sears catalog, because they did not come in the package with the cardboard. They were just in like little plastic bags. And I was like, half of the fun is having the actual, the board with like the information, their file and everything on the back. So I was glad to have them, but I was bummed at the same time because I'm like, this isn't what I wanted. It's what I wanted, but not what I wanted at the same time. So it's kind of crazy. But but I was also really big into music. So I remember like my sister I have an older sister, and her getting like the Footloose soundtrack on vinyl and a couple other albums. And I was like, ooh, I want that. And now I have those albums because she doesn't care about them anymore. So now they're in my vinyl collection. So I've still got some vintage, some authentic 84, like 83 to 86, 87 vinyl that my sister had kept for many years. And then when it was in my parents' basement, I was like, oh, I found it first. So it's going home with me.
Good.
Cool. Well, we're here to talk about 1985 and my video. I put together a whole bunch of all the Christmas stuff that I could find. I think I found most of it. I don't think I missed anything. There have been years I forgot a few things, but this year was pretty easy because it was actually fairly light on stuff compared to like other years that I did. I think 88 was probably the most because I remember my having to buy a new hard drive because I could not edit all of that together, and so that tells me how big certain years were. But 85 was cool, and so the first thing we're going to talk about, and I know it's out of the order, but Mike, you want to introduce this one, He-Man and She-Ra, A Christmas Special.
Oh my goodness. This is the Christmas special I think of from 1985. I remember watching this as a kid. The whole special is Orko's fault, as usual. He gets curious about a Sky Spy space shuttle intended on spying on Skeletor. When he accidentally launches the thing while he's still inside it, he ends up teleporting to Earth, where he crashes into a forest and he meets two little kids who got lost there while looking to cut down a Christmas tree. And Orko, of course, has never heard of Christmas. So these two, they're a brother and sister. They tell him all about Christmas. And before I continue, you know who else has never heard about Christmas? King Randor, despite being married to his earthling wife for at least 20 years.
She assimilated quick, I guess.
If I'm getting stranded on another planet and I marry the ruler of it, they're gonna find out about Christmas.
For sure.
But the special starts with people decorating. It starts as a birthday party for He-Man and She-Ra, for Prince Adam and Princess Adora. And their mother says it reminds her of Christmas. And her husband's like, of what now? So to bring back Orko, they need a very specific crystal that She-Ra goes and gets. And when they bring it back, oops, they also bring these two Earth kids back with him, who were like in the space shuttle with him, telling him about Christmas. And now the transport beam has to recharge for another day or two. So now they're bummed that, oh no, we're stuck somewhere else and we're going to miss Christmas on our home planet. So Queen Marlena decides, let's combine my adult children's birthday party with a Christmas party, and everyone's on board.
But for your birthday and Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Oh, they're December babies. They didn't care until now. But all of this new Christmas spirit gets detected like a disturbance in the Force by Horde Prime, who's the biggest bad of them all. He is Skeletor and Hordak's boss. Mm-hmm. And he sends both of them to kidnap the two Earth children. And Skeletor and Hordak are like bitter rivals. So it's a chase to kidnap the kids first. And first Hordak does. But then the kids and Orko are taken from Hordak by a group of giant evil cyborgs called the Monstroids. Because they want to bring the kids to Horde Prime themselves. So it's like a bounty hunt. But the kids get rescued by a group of smaller, cuter robots called the Manchines.
Okay, the fact that you remember all of these names.
Spinning already, you know.
Oh, I wrote them all down, but I do remember them because I've seen this not every year of my life since it aired, but pretty close to it. Like, there was a gap between the first time I saw it, and I think it was 1985 or maybe the year after or something, and then I had forgotten about it. And then I think Cartoon Network aired it at some point in the 90s, like Thanksgiving weekend, they would start their Christmas marathon. I was like, I remember this. And then I have watched it pretty much every single year since then. So it is burned into my brain now.
So we got a comment here. Hey, guys, this is from Christmas Cousins. I'm sure this is Chad. Nice change of pace. Usually Joe needs several beers to make it through one of our episodes when he's one. So, yeah, that's true. I'm not drinking tonight, but yeah.
It just feels like it with me describing this. But during all of that chaos with the others, Skeletor kind of sneaks in and kidnaps the children himself, along with a little Manchine puppy who's now with them. But his ship got shot down by Hordak, so now he's walking these kids up a snowy mountain to get to Horde Prime, and they're complaining it's cold. So Skeletor's like, fine, here are some jackets, let's go. And they're really nice jackets. So they're like, thank you, Skeletor. Thank you, Mr. Skeletor. You're so nice. Nice. I am not nice.
I am not nice.
That's my favorite part of this whole thing. Skeletor ends up protecting them from a snow monster, and he gets curious about what the big deal is with this Christmas. And the conversation goes like this.
He gets the spirit. So, yeah.
His heart grows three sizes, and
like
he saves the children by accident. But when they're describing Christmas, he's like, oh, and everyone has lots of fun. You mean to get into fights? No, they have fun. Fights are fun. I like fights.
Oh, that's great.
So Gerry and I actually did a video on this where we talked about the good parts of it, because let's be honest, I mean, it's for He-Man, it's pretty bad, but it's a classic. It's a classic. It's long, and we all had
I wanted so bad to say, like, when you said what are the good parts, I want to be like all of it, but
whenever Skeletor's on screen.
I threw out a theory, and I don't think Gerry bought it, but I want to see what you guys think. All right. That little girl from Earth that they bring. Did you notice her hair? Her hairstyle?
It's very blonde. Like, she's the blonde one, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It is He-Man's hair.
Very pink.
Oh, you're right.
I think that is He-Man's secret daughter. That's I threw that.
Hot take.
He-Man's too chaste, right? I mean, there's no way.
They might be related. These might be like
that's
cousins
true.
Or brothers, something like they might be related to Queen Marlena, and they didn't know. Like,
I think I that's my theory. I'm sticking to it. Gerry didn't buy it, but that's fine.
He's like, first of all, He-Man and She-Ra are supposed to be, they're somewhere between 18 and 21 during this run, which is ridiculous. And it gave me like terrible expectations of what I would look like when I grew up.
Exactly, for real. Yeah.
So, anybody else have any other thoughts about He-Man and She-Ra, the Christmas special?
Just that it's amazing. I mean, Skeletor is like the greatest. He has his Ebenezer Scrooge moment in this. He turns around, and then because it's a TV show, he's gonna like go right back to being, the evil. But it was just great to see him struggle, like fighting against his own conscience and his self, trying to save the children, and he shoots Hordak's ship down. I mean, it was fantastic. I love it.
Here we go. Time. He-Man stealing Marlena's shuttle and taking trips back to Earth to blow off steam.
Oh, no.
Exactly. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. If I'm going to talk to Kevin Smith, I think Kevin Smith is rating those new He-Man Master of the Universe.
I don't know.
We need to see those Earth kids come back in the 3rd season.
Look,
and that girl has got to be He-Man's daughter. That's my
he
hot
doesn't need
take.
to steal the ship. He can blow off steam with Tila if he needs. It's there's no point.
Not wrong.
And Jay says 1985 is the prime of the 80s. So obviously people are loving 85. Let's see what's next. And Gerry, Gerry, why don't you tell us about G.I. Joe, Cobra Claus are coming to town?
Yes. So Cobra is always trying to find a way to defeat G.I. Joe and take over the world. In this instance, they hide themselves. They shrink themselves down with Destro's molecular reducer enlarger. They hide themselves, great name, inside toys that they were going to give away in like a Toys for Tots kind of thing. So they hide themselves in the toys. The G.I. Joe guys take them back to the base because it's not quite Christmas yet, and they haven't distributed the toys yet. While everyone's away on like furlough, except for a few guys here and there, they come out of the toys, start attacking, and they're able to enlarge themselves with the ray gun again. And they capture Duke and several of the others like Covergirl and Shipwreck and I think Junkyard and Mud are there and Roadblock. So it's like just a handful of guys. Their whole plan is to frame G.I. Joe. And so they used Zartan in a Duke mask, and he gives a communique about how we're declaring martial law, pretending to be Duke, and they hop in the G.I. Joe Sky Strikers, and they fly over a town and essentially try to take it over. But of course, luckily, G.I. Joe, Shipwreck especially, is good with getting out of tight situations, and he grabs the key that Cobra Commander had tossed in their cell because Cobra Commander has to gloat, frees himself, accidentally enlarges Polly, his pet parrot, who helps them save the day, and the whole thing is revealed to be a sham by Cobra, and it's all great. Oh, and by the way, Junkyard has a change of pace and change of heart, and he now loves Christmas. So all's well that ends well, but it's bananas. I mean, you got a giant talking parrot here. It's something called
Jingle bells, jingle bells.
It's the best.
Mike, is there a voice that you're not going to be able to do in any way?
Right. Yeah.
Probably. I'm not going to attempt. Like I can't do Roadblock and his rhyme there.
No.
I think
greetings.
I think my favorite is how depressed Junkyard is for some reason. Like he's just this like, oh, I just don't like Christmas. I know. I know. It's just it's so funny because he gets so depressed, and it's just like I don't get why.
He's got the Christmas blues,
I feel like I remember him explaining it, but
he mentions about his dad. Yeah.
Did it? Okay.
Just growing up, it was not a good time for him.
Yeah.
So.
But still, I mean, shrinking yourselves down and hiding in toys, that's either like the most brilliant plan
That's one of their better plans.
Exactly.
So I have a question. because as a huge fan of GI Joe, was Shipwreck anybody ever favorite ever? Did anybody ever really like Shipwreck?
I like
mean,
his character, but he wasn't my favorite by far.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always hated Shipwreck for some reason. I don't know why. As a kid, I remember someone got me the Shipwreck for my birthday. I clearly remember this. And, as a kid, I was just like, oh, I hate this. I probably said that to my friend. I probably hurt their feelings for life. And, you bought me like the worst G.I. Joe figure ever. But
wow.
Yeah, I know.
I
was a horrible 10-year-old man. So, Eddie, here we go. Shipwreck was the sleazy ladies' man. Laugh out loud.
He was. He did try. He had to shoot a shot with everyone. It's like you do you, guy.
Sailors, man.
Yeah,
That's right. Worse. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. So, any more thoughts on G.I. Joe, Cobra Claus Come to Town?
That's a lot of fun, that one.
Yeah. I mean, this was one that I remember. I love G.I. Joe. I love the cartoons. I have the action figures. So I remember those. Like anytime there was a Christmas special was something that I loved. It was like the best. So yeah, I remember this one.
It's funny because I was a huge He-Man fan. I was a huge G.I. Joe fan, but I really don't remember the He-Man Christmas special. But I remember this episode when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and maybe by the time then He-Man just wasn't being shown, or they showed the Christmas special once, and if you missed it, because I don't know if I ever saw it live.
There was a gap
in the 80s. Yeah. Rumor has it that Shipwreck has his own Christmas podcast now. So
I've been on it.
all right, then. Okay. Line of the night.
It was
there we go.
1985.
Oh man, Neil Ross.
All right. Rocky 4.
Yeah.
Tim,
Yes.
take it away.
I mean, come on. This is the Christmas movie of the 80s, even though only one part of the movie actually takes place on Christmas, but that doesn't matter. That's the crux of the movie, right? So, quick synopsis of the movie, if I can. Rocky is wanting to retire. He's watching his friend Apollo Creed want to show that he can beat this new Russian fighter that seems to be unstoppable. And against Rocky's wishes, he does fight and gets killed, spoiler alert, in the ring, which then causes Rocky to say, I have to avenge my friend's death. And so he challenges him to a fight in Russia on Christmas Day. And by the end of the movie, he has eliminated, he's in the Cold War. And if two guys in the middle of the ring can beat themselves up and still love each other, then if we can change, then you can change. We can all change. And that was it. We're done.
Yeah.
World peace has been established. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
Yes.
The only Christmas movie that can say it ended the Cold War, right?
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's also 2/3 music videos. So if which, I mean, come on, it's 85. Somebody said the prime of the 80s. This is the heyday of MTV. I mean, why would he not have these long montages with this awesome soundtrack, which I was listening to the soundtrack earlier, just because I love it so much. It's on my 80s Flick Flashback mixtape playlist on Apple Podcasts. Shameless plug. But all these songs that he's just driving, and there's all these flashbacks from, him and Apollo. It was so great. And of course he's done a director's cut now that's not terrible. It's not as fun as the original, but it's
That's the best.
fine.
It's the best description. Not terrible.
He took out the robot. He took out
exactly.
the robot. You can't take out the robot.
Paulie and the robot might have been like my favorite scenes as a kid. Paulie's the comic relief. You need that. You need that in the movie. So the stakes are too high for it to be serious that whole time. But talking about the worst people on the planet, can we all agree that Adrian is the worst spouse ever? Like, she never believes in him. Like, You can't win. Yeah, that's what I want to hear before I fly to Russia and possibly die at the hands of a Russian who's already killed my best friend. Thank you for your support. I'm leaving in the morning.
Yeah, so this was a no-brainer for me when I was putting my list together, even though I know it's not technically a Christmas movie. It's a
Yeah.
Christmas adjacent movie.
Right.
It takes place during the Christmas holiday. He ends the Cold War on Christmas. What better way to end Christmas? I mean,
Right.
This
geez.
totally counts.
There's a Christmas
totally
tree. There is a Christmas tree at the end. You know,
Right.
when his son is there watching him, you know.
Oh yeah.
So it's Christmas enough. It's got enough Christmas in it. There's plenty of winter in Russia.
Right.
Uh,
No.
All right. So which music montage is better? The one where he's driving or the one where he's training?
Oh, the training one.
Ooh, the
Training,
training
I think.
one wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, the training one is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, well, I guess what's the better song? I guess that's the better way to put it, because the other one's just flashbacks, but the other one is training.
Yeah.
So which,
The training montage is good.
It was what, Burning Heart? Is that the one that was?
Yeah, I think Burning Heart is the
Yeah.
one in the car, which is great. Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm still giving the edge to training. It's just
Yeah, I would say
it puts
that-
me in
yeah.
that right mood.
Yeah, I said that
Yeah.
one pumps me up more. So I
Yeah.
think it has a slight edge. So
yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Whenever he lifts up they're all on the
log,
no,
Yeah.
they're all on
or the
Right?
truck.
what is it, the trailer or whatever, and he picks
Yeah.
them up, and then he gets them up, and then he runs up to the mountain to yell Drago. I mean, God, you don't get much better than that. You really don't. You know, it's such a good movie.
Yeah.
All right. Happy birthday, Polly.
Right. Happy birthday, Polly. Happy birthday, Polly.
And just to follow up, I'm on
No
the
easy way out.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the
Hearts on
opposite.
Fire,
I
that's
remember
what
the
it
He. Yeah, so I'm the opposite. He remembers the He-Man special, but not the GI Joe one. And then, yeah, No Easy Way Out is the car song. Hearts on Fire is the training.
Hearts on
montage.
Fire.
So
Oh,
Hearts
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
yeah, Hearts on Fire. That was the best one. So
Yeah,
I think we have to I think we'll give it to them on that. Yeah, I mean, class. It's, you know, is it the best Christmas movie of the '80s?
No.
No, okay, it's not. But is it best? Is it best a Christmas movie of 1985? Maybe.
Yes.
You know.
Sorry.
Cool.
Did I answer that too quickly?
All right. So, Amazing Stories, Santa 85.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take this one. I'll just sort of read my little quick synopsis of what I put together for it. So Douglas Seal, who portrays Santa 3 years later in Ernest Saves Christmas, he's arrested for burglary after tripping the alarm at a house. He's placed in jail with a bunch of drunk Santas and the non-believing sheriff who doesn't believe that he's Santa Claus, but 8-year-old Bobby does, and he's the only one who can break him free out of jail. And then as they fly away, he gives the sheriff a toy that he always wanted, and he gets his Christmas spirit. So first off, Amazing Stories. I watched the show. I remember watching the show all the time. I didn't remember this episode, and I feel bad because I probably haven't seen it since, who knows, the 80s probably, because I know I most likely saw it because I watched that show every week. But when I was going through the research and I saw Douglas Seal, I'm like, oh my God. Not only is he like one of the best Santas ever because he's in Ernest Saves Christmas, he's still great in this. You know, like this is he was just really good in this. And the story for this was just fun, you know? And so when I watched...
They copied it right later on in the Santa Claus. So, you know, I guess it's got to be a pretty decent story.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. I did not watch Amazing Stories growing up, so this is one I only encountered recently, and I was just like, "Oh, this is really good." And Douglas Seal, underrated Santa between this and
I agree.
So good.
I agree.
Yeah.
And by the way, the sheriff is Pat Hingle. So he's Commissioner
Mhm.
Gordon.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
there you go. There you go. Yeah. But yeah, I was a big Amazing Stories fan as well. Like I watched every episode. Would not miss it for anything. And I want to say this might be one that I missed because we typically traveled around Christmas. So I think this might have been one I didn't catch when it came on first, and was hoping they would show the rerun at some point. I think I saw it a couple of years later or whatever. But I have very fond memories of Amazing Stories, and I wish that, for a while, like maybe 15 years ago, they had them on Netflix, but they were like the standard, they weren't HD, so the picture quality was pretty terrible. But I went back and rewatched like every season I could get when it was streaming. So
Yeah.
one of my favorites for sure.
And of course the theme song. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. I was really surprised I did not get copyright flagged, but I used just a small snippet of it, and that passed. So hey, knock on wood, because we don't want that to happen now. But anyways, yeah, I mean, Amazing Stories was really great. So let's talk about toys of the 80s before we talk more about movies and TV. And we've already kind of discussed some things that we got, but some of the big toys of that year, as I mentioned in the beginning, well, first off, wrestling figures were huge. I mean, this was the year that the big who was the maker of these? It was
LJN, I think.
LJN,
I think,
yeah. Like they made these rubbery wrestlers, and now I only had just started getting into WWF at the time, so I don't think I got any for 85, but I clearly remember, my friends having these things, and they seemed like so amazing. Now when you look back, they're like the crappiest action figures ever made. But Transformers was still big that year in 85. Pound Puppies, which I don't know if you got Pound Puppies. Okay.
I had Pound Puppies. Yep.
And then as we mentioned,
Robotech, the Robotech toys was another one.
Never got into Robotech.
Yeah.
I never really did either, but I did have one of the figures because I thought he looked super cool, and he reminded me of Keith from Voltron. So that's the only reason. The only reason I had Rick Hunter, but so Robotech was another one that was out during that time.
And G.I. Joe, obviously, as we mentioned, we all were collecting G.I. This is prime G.I. Joe year.
Thundercats and Mad.
Thundercats.
Yeah. 1985. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and Rainbow Brite. I'm sure we all had our Rainbow Brite.
Listen, I watched Rainbow Brite. I was all in on Rainbow Brite. Didn't have like a $1 or anything.
I saw the movie.
I watched it a lot. Yeah, movie's great. Movie's great.
Yeah. So even though the Nintendo did technically come out this year, it was not a big toy because nobody knew about it at first.
It wasn't until 87, I think.
85. It was released in test markets. I think New York and Los Angeles. So I didn't get it until 89, and actually it was my dad was the one who got it. It was for my dad, who was younger than I am now.
But the system that was big that year, and I screwed up in my audio recording because I said the 2600, but the Atari 5200 was in their second year that year. I know Coleco was also big and stuff like that, but I think this was the final year for Atari. I think they pretty much died right after this year, but it was still, that was the one video game system that people still got. So
it was in television. It was Mattel's.
Yes, I had one of those as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I probably got a few games for that Christmas. There was a big one. Was that when we got Burger Time? I don't know, but that was a big one. We had a port of Donkey Kong. We had a game called Venture, which was it was a lot like Adventure on the Atari, but it was a little higher quality.
So I can't remember if I got my NES Christmas of 85 or 86. I know I didn't get mine until probably 88. 87 maybe, but I think it was 88. I think it was. I remember everybody else having it before we did, but of course that's usually how that goes. Didn't get an NES until 90-91, which you almost could have gotten the Super Nintendo by then, but
Right.
was
Right.
Yeah,
was
but
still-
the NES was still cooking by then.
Yeah,
that had
yeah.
like a
Yeah, they had
really
games
long
for a
life.
time.
Yeah, it was still G.I. Joe Transformers in 85, and I think I got Sludge for the family Secret Santa gift that Christmas.
Now I know you mentioned Back to the Future being a big hit. Did anybody get into the skateboard craze after that? Like, did anybody else get skateboards then? Okay, I know I was older.
My
So, yeah, that
cousin
was
did. And,
that was.
and
I
he
mean,
built like the ramp outside and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. That was a
But,
little
no,
later.
I-
Like it grew after that, where like Tony Hawk was starting to get like, a little bit more popular, like the late 80s. But
When Tony
Yeah.
Hawk was in a little movie called Gleaming the Cube. That's when I
Yes.
got really into watching skateboarding.
yeah,
So, Tib, I would not have done that because that would have been physical activity, and I couldn't leave my house. So,
Yeah, I was a little.
yeah. In
Talking about
85, yeah,
Nintendo,
yeah.
I don't think many of us were skateboarders here.
no.
Yeah, see, in 85, we lived on a dead end street that there were 30 kids between like 10 and 15. So we were always out. We were either going from someone's house to watch a movie on VHS, who rented what from the local grocery store, VHS copy that weekend, or we were outside like playing ball or skateboarding or BMX biking. Rad, I think, had come out by then, so we were big with BMX biking and stuff. So yeah, I was in and out all summer. But we played G.I. Joe. We played with our Transformers outside. Got dirt all in them so they wouldn't fold back up. So it was pretty
That's right.
None of my toys would be collector's items. I'll just put it that way. I played with all my
No,
toys.
same.
So
All right. Well, let's get back to talking about TV specials. And Mike, I'm going to let you take this one: The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus.
Oh my goodness. This is a Rankin Bass special. It was the last stop motion animated Christmas special they ever made. And I saw this before I ever saw Santa Claus is Coming to Town or any other story about the origin of Santa. So for a long time, this was my number one source for how Santa got started.
It's like, wow.
It is based on a 1902 book by L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and it takes place in the same universe. They don't mention it in this special, but it is that kind of bonkers.
wow.
So it starts out with little baby Claus. He's found abandoned in a forest by the Great Ack, immortal master of the woods. And first he gives this baby to a lioness to raise. She's like, I don't know how to raise a human baby. Let this lion do it. And then there's a wood nymph named Nacille who finds out about the baby and steals it to raise herself. But then after he grows up, the Great Act says Claus has to go live with the other mortals now. He flies him around the world, showing him how terrible we all are. And Claus vows to make the world better. So he grows up, he settles in the Laughing Valley of Ho-Ha-Ho. Get it? Befriends some children who live in a nearby village, starts making them toys, which angers a bunch of evil creatures called the Ogwas, who influence children to do bad things. So bringing joy and happiness to the kids is making their job harder. So they keep attacking Santa as he's trying to deliver these toys until the Great Ack has had enough of watching this. So he rounds up all of his immortal super friends to defeat the Ogwas. And you get this crazy stop motion battle scene with just superpowers flashing back and forth between the groups until the Ogwas they've perished, they say. But this allows Claus to continue delivering toys, and as word spreads of his kindness, he has to start loading them onto a sleigh because it gets heavy, and his friends from the forest bring him reindeer, where you can only use the reindeer one night a year on Christmas Eve for some reason. So that's how they kind of explain this is why there are reindeer, and this is how they fly. And as he gets older and he's on his deathbed at the end, the Great Ack assembles the Council of Immortals, tells him about Claus's good deeds, and convinces them to grant him immortality just in time. And now he's Santa Claus.
Yep. Yeah, there's sound imps, there's wind demons. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
this
Oh
thing
yeah.
is nuts, and I love every minute of it. But you
Oh
can
yeah.
also tell it's like advanced, like compared to their original stop motion. Like even going
Oh
as far
yeah.
back as like Willie McBean and his Magic Machine or some of the others, like
Right.
they've really gotten it down where the movement is so smooth and elegant. I had a friend in the industry that worked on, was it Coraline maybe? And he was saying when I was telling him about this, he went and checked it out. He was like, "Wow, this like seems more modern than some of the
Mhm.
stuff out there." So, I mean, it really is great animation. So you have to commend them for that, and also for having the guts to do the story in the first place, because
Yeah, it's a
they've always
beautiful
had like a
special again.
loose continuity, and this is just nowhere near it, and that's
No.
okay. It was fantastic.
So, if you guys watched my video, I made a big blunder on this one, and I own up to it. I've seen this probably 3 times my entire life.
Okay.
And I've not. I don't like it. I do not like this one.
It's
Um,
an
I get it.
because
Yeah.
it was like my introduction to the idea that Santa Claus had to have been born and grown up somewhere. So this was my origin story for a long time.
So I probably hadn't seen it for 10 years. I rewatched it half-assed when when I was doing my videos. It's like I knew I hated this, and I knew that I had to feature it as one of the bigger things because a lot of people I do know like this, but I hate it. But I knew that if I just gave it like a tiny like, oh yeah, that happened, people would be like, that was a big one that year, whatever. So I wrote out my synopsis, and when I read it, I said the Great AK, and I didn't.
You did say the AK, yeah. It's a
And
hack. Yeah.
and I didn't catch it until the video went live, and I was rewatching it because and I was like, oh my god, I not only did I screw up the 2600 Atari, but I screwed up the Great AK,
The Master Woodsman.
Yes, and I'm like, so yeah, I admit I hate this one. I didn't really care. I kind of wrote a synopsis. I watched it again, but this is not a good Rankin Bass one for me. I know a lot of people like it, but I'm gonna have to say
Understood.
The funny,
Understood. Not even a little
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, like, Rankin Bass, like, you think about Romeo Muller and all of the craziness that he usually invents, and this is L. Frank Baum, but also, like, it fits right along with everything else that
You know
Romeo
it
Muller
does.
does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, like, there's an island of toys run by a lion with wings, and the toys are all, like, manufactured incorrectly, or, I mean, they're just somehow wrong. I mean, that's weird. So I mean, it's strange, but it fits in their canon. So I do love it.
Mhm. All right, well, let's move on to something that I do like. New.
This is one of the big running jokes is that I always kind of cheat on some of these lists. I always like Kobayashi Maru, Captain Kirk it somehow, and this is one of those. It is not really a Christmas episode at all, but it's kind of a Christmas episode. This aired in May. This was from the Newhart show, The Prodigal Daryl was the name of the episode. And this is fun. So everybody knows Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. They win a jingle writing contest. And because of that, they get a lot of money. One of the brothers, the one in the middle, he takes his cut and he goes off like prodigal son style to live it up. They have to track him down. And while all this is happening, Joanna and Bob, sorry, I don't think his name is Bob, but I'm just going to
Dick.
call him Bob. Joanna and Bob,
It
they
was
end
Dick.
up,
Was it a Dick?
Dick, that's
Dick.
right. So Joanna and
Dick.
Dick are getting ready for their Christmas card. They want to do it early because if they don't, they're going to forget it. So they get all decorated. They just it's fantastic. But anyway, they have to actually drive to go get Daryl, bring him back home, and it's a whole prodigal son thing where they forgive him and welcome him back. But there's also a giant, like 14 or 15 foot tall Christmas tree in their living room in May. So, and it's like a brilliant way to sneak a a Christmas episode into a season that you didn't have a Christmas episode for. So I have to commend them for that.
You
So,
felt
Gerry-
inspired.
So, Gerry, I'm going to give this to you. This is a Christmas episode in my book because it features. There's a lot of Christmas in it. So I think I think that every once in a while when I go, I don't know if that's really a Christmas movie, Gerry, or a TV show. This one I would give you a pass on because I included it. I'm more focused on the picture, Christmas picture, setting up the tree and everything. Like to me that was the more interesting part of the story, anyways. But this is a great Christmas one. I don't think Newhart had a lot. I mean, they had a couple Christmas ones, but none of them were that. I don't really remember any of them being that great.
Yeah.
But I always remember this one. Yeah,
the first one is like No Room at the Inn. That one's a classic to me. I love that one. And then they really didn't have. There's like this one, and then I think they mentioned Santa in like one other episode, and that's it. So not a whole lot of Christmas in their shows, but they snuck it in right before the end of the season. So good for them.
Yeah. So, all right. Any other thoughts on Newhart? Okay. The Fall Guy. Tim.
Yes.
I never watched The Fall Guy, so.
No,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
What?
I know.
Shame on you all. Shame on you all.
I've seen an
Got some
episode here or
homework to
two.
do. All right.
But
But-
so yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
tell us about The Fall
Okay.
Guy.
So the Fall Guy is the TV show. The Fall Guy is very different than the movie that came out early this year. Even though I loved the movie, it was still fun. But plot wise, story wise, was completely different. So Colt Seavers is a stuntman in Hollywood who on this because stuntmen at this time didn't really get paid very much. They didn't have any kind of notoriety. They were just the theme song, The Unknown Stuntman. So he worked as a bail bondsman, kind of a bounty hunter on the side, and he would have, I think it changed every season with who his, the person that would call him and say, hey, I need you to track down this person. And so he would take these jobs. And of course, because he's a stunt man, he always did something that seemed reckless. And then I think it was his cousin, Howie, played by Douglas Barr, in the first episode comes to Hollywood because he wants to become rich and famous like his cousin. And his cousin's like, yeah, I'm not rich or famous, but sure. So he kind of temporarily says he's going to help him out. So that's kind of the general synopsis of The Fall Guy. This episode, called The Escape Clause, actually released on December 21st, 1985, in its last season. So that kind of tells you about, how well it was doing. Because it already peaked at that point. But the summary of this episode is Colt and the gang turn good Samaritans around Christmas Eve as they help a part-time Santa evade a bunch of gangsters who are after the stolen government bonds in his possession and use the reward money, of course, from the bonds to help an orphanage from being shut down. I mean, that's everything you'd ever want in a Christmas episode is a Santa being chased by gangsters and the money going to an orphanage at the end. So it checked all the boxes for me. So.
Yeah.
This was the first this is the first episode of The Fall Guy I ever watched, and I just watched it, the past month or so, and I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah.
I've had a hard time
fun
tracking
show.
it down. You can find a bunch of clips on it.
Yeah. I was trying to rewatch it again to kind of refresh my memory, and I couldn't find a full episode without having to pay. But even there, I don't think I could find the fifth season. I think season 1 and 2 were readily available, but I couldn't find the last season.
They've been doing that a lot lately for these older shows.
Yeah. And I was going to cover it this year with the movie coming out. Like, it's on my list. Yeah. And I can't watch the whole thing, so and I
you
don't
can
really
watch.
feel like
I watched. I think there's like I said, you guys saw the clips that were on YouTube, which is where I found it.
Right.
I watched all the ones that were there. I kind of got a good sense of the show. I think I saw most of the episode, but I mean, I'd never really seen the show before. So this was, but it looks like it's going to be even harder to find now. So
also. Judith Barcy comes out in this one, so this is another one of her final appearances. Yeah,
I don't know
Tragic
who that
story.
is.
Sorry to be a downer, but I just it's like, hey, I know her, and sure enough, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's move on. Punky Brewster. So
Yeah.
this was one of my picks, only because the episode is pretty insane.
Yeah. We've been saying that a lot.
Yeah. So
It's the 80s.
well, it's 85, so of course.
Right.
So Punky steals a cashmere scarf as a Christmas present for Henry, getting the idea from Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter Billingsley makes an appearance in this episode and teaches Punky about shoplifting. And she accidentally switches bags with Mike, her teacher, who is then racially profiled, if you watch the episode, caught and arrested for shoplifting. Punky then admits what she did to Henry, and she's forced to work at the store as a gift wrapper at the end. And as we all laugh because, poor Mike, I mean, I remember when I watched this episode, I'd seen this a few times, but, first off, Peter Billingsley teaching her how to steal in a Christmas episode of Punky Brewster. Great casting. I don't know if there was if that was intentional.
Oh yeah,
really,
no, he's
Chris.
great.
Christmas Story wasn't huge, so I don't know if there was people were thinking, oh, we're gonna get Ralphie from A Christmas Story back in 1985, but maybe they did.
No.
He didn't want to be typecast, so he went for it immediately.
and then I'm watching the episode, and Mike is just shoplifting, or not shoplifting, but they think he is. The guy's just staring him down. Mike, he's racially profiled, and that's not even discussed. That's not brought up. That none of that happens. It's just he's arrested because, of course, they think he's the one who's going to steal something, and Punky admits everything at the end, and it's all oh, it's okay, it's fine. But this was a fun episode. I really enjoyed rewatching this one after not seeing it probably for a few years. But did you guys watch this one? Did you watch Punky?
Oh yeah, loved Punky Brewster.
I was a big Punky Brewster
really
fan.
got into
sure.
Punky Brewster that much, but I have seen this one, and it's a fun episode. But
Yeah.
you're right; it's like, wow, all that happens in like 23 minutes or whatever. Like, whoa.
And there's another part in this episode that's hysterical. Is they keep doing these jokes with the mall announcer, who will say certain things, and there's a point where the mall announcer says, Moms, if your child weighs more than 70 pounds, just write Santa a letter because we don't want you sitting on your Santa's lap. And everybody laughs. They're like, oh, the fat kid can't sit on Santa's lap. And that's funny. Like this is, of course, 1985. This is what happens.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
This was the 80s, man.
Yeah. So
That's
Punky
right.
Brewster. Punky Brewster. Well, let's keep moving on. Commercials. My favorite part of putting these videos together is finding which commercials I'm going to use for each year. And a lot of times these commercials span over a few years, and some of them are bigger than others. The Folgers commercial debuted this year. This was they've retold this one a few times. The incestuous one in the 90s is probably the most popular one, but this is the first one. This was a big commercial.
Yeah, Peter comes home.
Yeah,
Yes.
Peter.
Peter
This is
comes
iconic.
home, surprises. He makes crappy coffee for his parents, and and they wake up. I mean, truthfully, have you ever had
Wake me up,
Folgers?
too.
Yeah.
That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
So other commercials that that were that year, there was a Transformers commercial with I can't remember his name from Webster, but he says robots in this.
Emmanuel
No,
Lewis.
the father.
The dad. Yeah, I
The
remember.
dad.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yes, and he it's the most boring commercial you've ever seen. And they had all these great GI Joe commercials and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like, kids, or he's talking to the parents. He goes, parents, you should buy these Transformers for your kids, and these kids are just flying the Transformers around or whatever. He says it's the most popular toy of the year, and then he goes, robots in disguise, you know, and he's got it's
Yeah, he says it.
and it's but it's a bad commercial, but it
weird.
ends so well though, the with him saying this. Any other commercials you guys can think of from the I mean, it doesn't have to be from 85 specifically, because I think it's hard to a lot of times to figure out which ones actually were 85.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I think the Polaroid one, where the kids rig up a Polaroid camera to try and get a picture of Santa, and they get it, but then Santa like takes it with him. It's just like, nice try. Leaves them a little note. That's the one. I think that's 85.
Yeah, I had that one as 86, but again,
okay.
But again, it's also, you know, you have to just kind of, there's not like a big database of this stuff, so you just have to, you know, you see what people put on YouTube, and someone could say it came out in 1982, and I probably believe it, but
right. No, it all
Yeah.
depends on like what do you have on tape and when did you tape it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So,
and
of
like
course,
you said, even then, that's a little, you can't really judge that because sometimes they ran them a few years. So
yeah. God, that's the thing. Like, I can't remember. Like, the ones I remember are the ones that ran the longest. Like, you know, they're still doing that one Hershey's Carol of the Bells. Hershey. Yeah, Hershey's been playing that forever. But I'm trying to remember.
Honey Nut Cheerios with Scrooge is another one.
They ran that a lot. But I think you had,
favorite.
I think you had one in the video about the Coke. I want to buy the world a Coke song.
Yep.
I think they use it. Christmas. I mean, like, that's an iconic Coke commercial that I remember seeing that, you know, year after year. So
that is the one that came out in 85, because I think at this point in December they released it because New Coke had failed so much. And they were trying to get people to be back. Yeah.
So they go back to the
original
Remember when
one.
you loved Coke? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Coke
from my research that I've been able to figure out, that seems to be what the marketing ploy was, because they, you know, they were like, we got to go back to the original, you know. And I think McDonald's commercials were always. I always try to find a McDonald's commercial. I always try to find the Toys R Us commercial. Because you got to watch those. But yeah. So great. Well, let's keep moving. One Magic Christmas. Mike,
I get all the weird ones. I'm excited. This movie, my wife introduced me to this a few years ago. It was one of her favorite Christmas movies. Here's how I like to explain it. It's like It's a Wonderful Life, if instead of a guardian angel showing you what it would be like if you never existed, it showed you what it would be like if your spouse and your children were killed. It's a roller coaster of a movie, and it's a Disney movie. This is on Disney Plus. Go watch it. But the guardian in this one is named Gideon. He's played by Harry Dean Stanton, who's great. He's assigned by Santa. Not God or another angel. He's assigned by Santa Claus, more about that later, to a woman who's played by Mary Steenburgen, whom I love.
Yeah.
Another Christmas icon. She plays Jenny, whose husband has lost his job. They're about to lose their home. Husband wants to open a bike shop to fix bicycles, but that would wipe out their savings. And amid all of that, she's just dreading any thought of Christmas coming. So that's where Gideon the angel comes in. He saves her daughter while she's crossing the street to mail a letter to Santa, and tells her, hey, why don't you give your mother that letter to mail for you? And she never does. So Gideon tells this little girl, listen, some bad things are going to happen soon, but don't be afraid, which is terrifying. But this little girl, her name's Abby. She's like 5, so she's just, okay. So now it's Christmas Eve. Jenny's on her way to work, stops at a gas station. A man there is trying to sell some of his possessions to support himself and his son, and she ignores them. Meanwhile, her husband decides to stop at the bank to take some money out of their savings so he can go Christmas shopping for the kids. Leaves the kids in the car because it was the 80s, man.
It was the 80s.
The little girl sees her mom at work. She works across the street from the bank at the grocery store. So she gets out of the car and decides to go in and say hi. And she's like, whoa, what are you doing here? Oh, Dad's at the bank. Okay, I'm going to bring you back to the car. Puts her back in the car with her little brothers there. Kids are still in the car. And also her boss like sees her leave and fires her on Christmas Eve. And then she goes to the bank and it's being robbed by the guy that she met at the gas station who's trying to sell anything. He got so desperate that he robs the bank. Her husband's inside trying to calm this guy down and ends up getting shot. So now her husband is dead, and the guy from the gas station like flees into her husband's car with the kids in the back and like swerves to avoid the cops and drives into a river. So now poor Mary Steenburgen thinks her husband and children are dead. Goes back inside, but no, Gideon the Angel like saves the children. The police bring them home. And she like has to tell her children, look, your father's dead and he's never coming home. So the little girl asks Gideon the Angel to bring back her dad. And he says he can't, but Santa can. So he takes her to Santa's workshop, which is not run by elves, but by, quote, ordinary nice people who these are dead people who are now angels working for St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
And Santa is played by Jan Rubesch. You remember the second Mighty Ducks movie where Hans didn't come back? So here's his brother, Jan. That's Santa. Underrated Santa, too. He's like quieter and gentler, but I like this Santa a lot. Gives the little girl a letter that her mother wrote to Santa years and years and years ago. So she goes back home and gives her mom the letter. And that makes mom realize that she needs to be thankful for what she has. And she goes outside to mail her daughter's letter to Santa. Lady, it's Christmas Eve night. Or is it? It turns out this whole thing was an alternate reality that this guardian angel had to fix up in order to restore her Christmas spirit. And now it's 2 nights before Christmas again, and her husband's alive, and she goes to help the guy at the gas station, and her stupid boss at the grocery store doesn't fire her, gives her the day off, and everything is fixed. And then, happy ending, she actually sees Santa. The mom, Mary Steenburgen, sees Santa at the end, and they wish each other a Merry Christmas. And it's such a weird movie, but it's like I'm fascinated by it.
So I never saw this in the 80s. I
Right.
No, me neither.
I don't think anybody
same.
did, actually.
Well, my wife did, and that's why she's just like, you gotta watch this. I'm just like,
So when
What
I
was
was, so I remember this is probably about 10, 15 years ago. My wife and I were like, my wife doesn't get in the Christmas spirit all that much, but she's like, let's watch a Christmas movie, and
no.
you know, she married me, the Christmas aficionado, and you know, and I finally said, well, let's find one that I've never seen, and it's kind of hard to do. But I came across this one. I was like, what Magic Christmas? And I said, oh, it's a Disney movie. I said, I've never seen this one. I'm going to watch it.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's a reason.
My wife was like halfway through this when the kids die and everything. And she goes,
Right.
this is the most depressing movie I've ever seen.
It is like it takes you down a valley just to bring you back up, but it's such a roller coaster.
And
I want to say it's usually on the list of like worst Christmas movies.
I
Now,
understand.
There's a bunch more that are worse by far, but I think this was just high profile enough that it tends to slip under the radar there. But yeah, it's definitely
it's
choices
rough.
were made. Let's say that.
Choices were made.
Well, I
Yeah.
think what really gets me depressed about this movie is, so Ginny and her husband are already on hard times.
Yeah.
You know, not having a job, not having money, not having to do, you know, being able to support your family. And then you got Christmas and the hardships. But we have to teach you a lesson about your Christmas spirit. So we're going to take away more things
Yeah.
to
It
make
could
you.
they could all be dead.
I mean, I'm glad we talked about this one because it is so weird. But yeah. So Shannon says, I remember this movie. It was interesting. It's more than interesting.
Word.
It is. It is the most. It
nice
is.
to
I would say I would classify this as one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, and because it really is. It's like, but you're watching this and you see all the stuff that's happening, and you're like, "Merry Christmas," you know. So I don't know. All right, let's move on. All right, Moonlighting. 'Twas the episode before Christmas. Gerry, this was one of your recommendations.
I love Moonlighting. I watched every
Yes,
episode
yes.
because my
Me
parents
too.
watched every episode. It was innovative. It was different. I mean, they broke the fourth wall like all the
Mhm.
time.
Yep.
They did like a whole Shakespeare, like rhyming couplets kind of episodes. I mean, it was just cool and different, and it introduced me to Bruce Willis before Die Hard. You know, where he got like
Mhm.
uber famous. So I remember watching Moonlighting all the time, no matter what. So this episode is it has a typical Moonlighting spin. So a stool pigeon in like witness protection agency is tracked down and killed by his like former mob cohorts. His name is Joseph, by the way. His wife, whose name is Mary, manages to escape, and she leaves the baby on the doorstep of Agnes DePesto, the receptionist there
Right.
at
Rhyming
Detective
Agnes.
Agency.
Yes.
So she, David and Maddie get involved eventually. They come to work with these 3 FBI agents, all whose last name is King. So, of course, immediately Bruce Willis, has to say, well, you can see what's going on here, right? We've got Mary, a Joseph, 3 kings, a baby. I mean, it's just, it's craziness. And in the end, he dresses up in a Santa suit and there's like, comes down the chimney and they're throwing food and balls and ornaments at the villains to try to get them to stop, and then the 3 kings eventually catch the villain. So all that's going on. But the thing that I remember most about this, and it's like the craziest thing, was that at the very end of the episode, they go through it like changes the camera angle, and you see the cast and the crew and all of their families, and they just start singing, and there's fake snow, and it's a big Christmas carol session, and they just completely demolish. Like, it's not just breaking the fourth wall like Deadpool. It's like they just, it's gone. Like, look, here's all of the people that make this. We wish you a Merry Christmas. It was one of the strangest endings, but at the same time, it fit so perfectly in Moonlighting that it stuck out to me, always has stuck out to me. And I I have to watch this one like every few years just because it's so zany and wild.
So
But,
there's
yeah.
there's an episode in '86 that ends the exact same way. They all go in, the whole cast and stuff. I never watched Moonlighting as a kid, so I've only seen a few episodes, and mostly I guess the Christmas ones. But they ended the same.
Right.
They ended. Did they end more than those episodes in the breaking the fourth wall like that, with like the whole cast and everything, or was it just these Christmas
No,
ones?
not usually.
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
they
I was a
would
big. Yeah.
allude to things, and they would, like deadpan, like mug to the camera, things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much more
But,
subtle than what they did for the
right.
Christmas episodes. Yeah.
Right. This was like bam.
Yeah.
So I remember just it sticking out because like I'd never seen a show do that before. It was wild, and
Mhm.
yeah. And then of course David and Maddie, or I guess Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd do kiss under some mistletoe, and so it's like, wow, they're finally kissing. But it's like, and there was much rejoicing. Yay!
Yes.
But yeah, it was fun and memorable and different. So I have to put this one in my top of 85. Yeah.
I think it's in Richard Belzer's in it because he plays
Yes,
one of
he
the
is. He's
yes
the
yes,
hitman.
Mhm.
and
And he looks exactly the same. Like there's
exactly.
no.
Yeah. Well, and then when they're fighting them with toys, he takes a dart to the head, and I put that in the video because and I slowed it down just a little bit because you got to see it where it hits, and you could tell that it's almost like a dummy head that it switches to, or maybe
Yeah.
it was just the way he is, but it's like he gets that and he goes. "Blah!" and it's just, yeah, it was a funny moment. I enjoyed watching this episode. Like I said, I never saw Moonlighting as a kid. It wasn't something I ever really wanted to watch. But Mike, Tim, any other thoughts on that?
Clearly, Bruce Willis's most definitive Christmas role.
I'll stay silent on that one. But yeah, but I was a big Moonlighting fan like Gerry, so I remember that. But same thing, I remember them them going to the audience or the kind of seeing the behind the scenes that I'd never seen that before on a show. And you kind of look at it now, it's like, okay, now when Bill Murray does it in the Scrooged, that has become much more iconic, but it's been seen a lot more since then. But yeah, the Moonlighting episode is great.
Cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's keep going. We only have a few more. Tim, tell us about Growing Pains, A Christmas Story.
Growing Pains was another one of my favorite shows as a kid, and I have a funny story. But I remember us watching the pilot episode as a family, and my dad was like, "I don't like this show." So of course, me and my sister were like, "We're gonna watch every single episode." Yeah, he preferred Family Ties over Growing Pains. He had his issues, but it was a fun show, and I didn't realize this was like the first season of Growing Pains when this one came out, and it's fun. I rewatched this one again today because I remembered they did several Christmas episodes. I know you guys mentioned that on the last episode. Of course, Leonardo DiCaprio making his debut might be the most popular one, but for this one, while the Seaver family prepares for Christmas, one of Jason's patients contemplates suicide by, for some reason, jumping down the Seaver's chimney, which like, and who said this was a good idea? It's bonkers in its own way, but it's classic Growing Pains. Mike being as goofy as ever, and it hit all those marks. But I think, especially because Ben being so young, like I remember more of the older episodes as he was growing up, and so seeing him back when he was just a little kid, and his interactions with him about Santa's not real, like, are you sure, and all that banter they have back and forth was kind of fun to see him really be the young kid that he started with. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. But one interesting fact, because I thought about this and I had to look it up, he receives a puppy for Christmas, and the puppy is never seen again in any other episode of Growing Pains.
Right, of course not.
That was the thing I looked up, because when I rewatched this episode, I was like, I don't remember a dog.
Yeah, the same thing. I was like,
and turns out, there's nobody does, because it happened for one episode, and then
never again.
I guess they got rid of the puppy.
Yeah. He was not ready for that responsibility, so the puppy went away.
Yeah.
It's right around the same time where Ben is so young. This is right around the same time where he was voicing Linus on a bunch of Charlie Brown specials.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
This
makes sense.
Yeah, this was another weird episode. And I don't think they ever really played up Jason's patience all that much. Now, I don't really remember.
One they did. Yeah, I think season 1 they did, because I remember that, like, them being a little bit more, them popping up, like, different people popping up and going back into his office and him talking to them. But yeah, I think they kind of moved away from that, in season 2 and on.
Well, yeah, because people keep dressed up as Santa Claus and going to kill themselves by throwing them down
the kind of gremlins it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That is a good connection. Yeah, this was a very interesting episode, because like I remember watching Growing Pains. I love the whole sitcoms. Any sitcom I watch
exactly.
over and over again. And I'm sure I watched this live when it happened. But I'll be honest, I haven't visited Growing Pains in a long time. So whenever I got to, the great thing about making these videos is that I get to revisit everything in short amount of time. And I watched this one, and then I rewatched it after I did, because I was like, I'm not sure I caught everything that happened or that was said. Because I was looking at my notes, and I'm like, all right, I gotta go back, and I was like, I added. So then the second time I went through it, I added even more notes, and it was just got too long because I had to add the things about throwing ground beef down the chimney, and
right.
and the Tupperware container, and I'm like, why? Why does he have all that? And none of it makes sense.
No.
And but yeah, I mean, it's growing pains. The one thing I will say is that none of the Christmas episodes feature my favorite Growing Pains character, Boner Stabone. I mean, he's not in
right.
any of them, and that's a
shame.
real shame. That's a shame.
That's a shame.
So cool. All right. Any more Growing Pains discussion? If not, let's just talk about the superhero origin story that we're all waiting for. So the big Christmas movie besides Rocky IV. I asked that in the beginning. I said, is it this one or Rocky? I guess, well, maybe we can decide at the end. After delivering toys to a nearby village, Claus and his wife Anna are lost in the woods during a snowstorm. They're rescued by elves who proclaim it was prophesied for him to deliver their toys to all the children of the world. We learn how the reindeer fly, why the elves make toys, and what happens when an elf named Patch goes rogue. Once he becomes the Jolly One, along with Homeless Joe, they must stop greedy businessman BZ from exploiting Patch and his plans for Christmas 2.
Christmas 2.
So I think we all know everyone's thoughts. This is two different movies that happen in one.
Yes.
And the sequel easily could have been Christmas 2, and it's BZ creating Christmas 2 and competing with Santa. And that would have been an amazing movie. I want to see that movie. I want to see that one so much because I'll be honest, I love the second part more than the first part. The first part's nice and warm and fuzzy. I love John Lithgow. I think he's the best part of this movie. I think I'm going to start. I think we need to do some sort of celebration on March 30th or 25th or whatever it is. I think it's March 25th for Christmas 2. I don't know if we need to do some sort of celebration, but in honor of BZ because I think he's got an amazing story. But
next year will be 40 years. So
wow, that's old. Anyways, sorry, but yeah, Santa Claus the movie. Your thoughts?
I love this one. I saw it in the theaters. I remember specifically getting the popcorn, and my aunt snuck in some McDonald's burgers as well. It was like she had like this huge oversized bag, but I remember seeing this in theaters and I was excited and I loved it. And then it just kind of died away. But I agree, although with you that it's definitely two movies, but I actually, of course, like the first one better. I think I think it's I don't know, it's just structured a little bit better, and it's just more jolly. And even though some people say Santa Claus actually dies in the beginning, he and his wife, and then their spirits are whatever. Either way, if they're almost dead or if they're dead, either way we get Santa Claus, and it's fantastic. But the second movie with BZ, I mean, you're right. John Lithgow is and I knew him at this point from Buckaroo Banzai. Across the eighth dimension, because my cousin's in that movie, and so we'd seen that, and so I knew John Lithgow, but he kills it in this role. He really does. He's fantastic. He's like that sleazy businessman, and he doesn't care. And oh man, I loved it.
There was I forget what, he was on a talk show not a few years ago, and someone brought this up, and he goes, I don't understand why people like this movie. He hates this. But he goes, he said, bummer. when I'm in the States, nobody cares. But when he says, when he goes to England, everybody raves about that movie and knows him from that. And he goes in U.S. Yeah, I can't. I'll have to look for the clip, but I can't. I remember him talking about it, and I was watching it. I was like, oh wow, I've never heard him actually talk about this movie, and that was like a very strange thing. But Mike, what are your thoughts of Santa Claus the movie?
I love it. I didn't see it in theaters. I caught it on TV, and my parents taped it, so I would watch it every few years. But I feel like they played it on TV like for a few years after.
Yeah, they did.
But I don't
I
think it
remember
ever.
that.
Yeah, I don't think it made it out of the '80s though. But
Yep.
I kind of like that it feels like here someone's saying it.
They played it on Christmas Eve on ABC for a couple years in a row,
ABC.
86, 88.
Yep.
So one of the things they actually did play in 85, and I didn't include it because I wanted to include it at the end. They actually showed the making of this movie on prime time.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't want to include it because I wanted to be the big finale as Santa Claus the movie. But this like a few days before Christmas, they showed the making of this movie, and of course, it tied in with all the McDonald's commercials. There's a ton of time.
Oh, sure. There was a lot of McDonald's product placement, so your family sneaking in those burgers was appropriate. But,
Did you get
I
the book
like
that
the
they?
structure of this. I want more of the first half, though. It's like the elves are saying, "We've been expecting you. We've been making all these toys for centuries for you to deliver. Tell me more about that. How did that start?"
Yeah.
But these
Tim?
are the same people who produced the first few Superman movies,
Superman.
and they are like 2 movies in one. So this is just like a theme. That's how they know how to make movies.
That's right. Except they actually split. They actually did split Superman 1 and
One and
Superman
2.
2.
Yeah.
But even that, like
they
it
just
feels
fired
like
the director
the
between the
movies.
two.
It
It's all
feels
good.
like the escape from Krypton, and then Lex Luthor only shows up like halfway through, like right around the same time as BZ shows up. Like if you watch one and then the other, they had a system going and it worked.
Yeah, they definitely
They wanted
patterned
their,
this one
royalty-free
after Superman.
superhero,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Tim, any other thoughts?
I mean, like I saw this in the theater as well as a kid. I remember the McDonald's placement. Did you guys have the books that you got at McDonald's? I remember having the books.
Ornaments, but I did get the books. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't.
But
I have friends who have kept them though.
Oh wow. Yeah. But I remember leaving the theater and like wanting to like it, but for some reason not sure if I liked it as much as I wanted to like it.
Right. Right.
But like you said at the beginning, I think I was drawn to the beginning and I loved, and then once it got kind of more when it took that left turn with Lithgow the second half, it felt disconnected to me, and I couldn't put my finger on it there as an 11-year-old kid, but I still have a lot of love for it. I've watched it several times, and there's parts of it that there's essential Christmas things in it that you have to appreciate. Good, bad, or indifferent. It is an essential. It could be one of the essential 80s Christmas movies. I mean, you can't talk about the 80s and Christmas without talking about Santa Claus the movie. Whether you loved it, whether you hated it, or or somewhere in the middle like I am, but it's iconic. And it was an iconic Santa for me. Like I just remember him, and just like him taking off on the sleigh the first time, like how huge that was, and seeing it on a big screen, and just the music and but it does. It has weird little spots after that. Like just like there's trying to tell like 3 different stories at once, and it kind of all gets discombobulated.
But he's such a good Santa too.
Yeah,
I loved his Santa.
I did a good parts on this one where we tried to figure out like what was the good parts, what was the bad parts. I did it with Robert Nicholson, and my big moments was him as Santa. I can't remember the actor's name. I'm blanking on it right now.
David Huddleston.
David Hiddleston. Huddleston. That's it. David Huddleston. He's such a good Santa. He's probably one of the best Santas ever.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I agree.
The look of the film. I mean, Santa's Workshop. What you think of, that's what the movie is. I mean, that's
they nailed it.
They did nail it. Yeah. It was a little creepy that the elves use their beards as paintbrushes, but we'll forgive that.
I love that. I thought it was so silly.
I mean, what else
But
is gonna use? Like,
I think one of my
paintbrush?
favorite parts, and Robert did not agree with me on this, the McDonald's scene in this movie, which is just a pure scene of of course they paid to be in there.
Yeah.
It's such a classic 80s look of it. The browns, the yellows, the way the food looks, everything about it. And then you have to watch poor homeless Joe stare and watch these people eat against the window. It is it's one of my favorite scenes of the movie, only because of the nostalgia that you get from watching it. But yeah, I mean, we all know this movie's not great, but we also know that this movie is essential Christmas movie. It's one of the top ones you have to watch. It came out in 85. It was huge. I remember seeing it all over TV. I remember buying my dad the book adaptation for Christmas. I'm sure he hated it, but but yeah, it was a big movie. It was a big year for Santa Claus. I mean, there's no better way to end our discussion of movies and TVs, except for if we want to talk about honorable mentions, things that we didn't talk about. Couple of things. Jetsons. I love this episode. I mean, move that one broadcast. It's a classic episode. He just basically becomes a better person only until the next episode, and then of course, he
Skeletors it for sure.
Yeah,
I love one of my favorite shows from the 80s, and I was definitely not the target audience, was 227, but I loved that show. I love that episode, and that episode that's in it is very, very weird episode. The church loses its lease, and they have to move it, but they lose the church. How do that is the thing that you're like, well, how do you lose the church? Like, you didn't see this church going down the street, and then you just lost it. Like, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
But then great. I was watching it, and then I came up with this memory, and I wanted to see if you guys remember this, and I wrote it down specifically. When you watched 227, did it disturb you to realize that Olivia from Sesame Street
That's what got me hooked.
But she wasn't Olivia. Like, that wasn't her name. Like, when you were a kid and you're watching Sesame Street, you don't think these as actors.
Look, I watched the credits on Sesame Street. I saw that there was a name next to Big Bird, and I put two and two together.
So okay, all right. Well, other than Mike, I guess we all believed that But any other things in '85 that we didn't talk about today that you guys maybe want to mention?
I forgot to put it on my list, but you did have it on the video. But Pressure Luck game show, I was a huge fan. Yeah. I'm a huge game show nerd. And so I forgot to put that on my list when I sent it to you, but I kept thinking about it. I was like, man, I should have talked about Pressure Luck. I loved Pressure Luck. I loved watching. I love watching the new version that's on now. I watch every episode. One of my bucket list items is actually be on a game show, and I keep debating on which one I'm actually want to audition for, and I chicken out every time I try. But fun fact, also another one that's on that you talked about was Better Off Dead, which is another Christmas adjacent movie.
That counts,
right?
Yeah.
But Savage Steve Holland, who wrote and directed Better Off Dead, was one of the animators that created the whammy for Pressure Luck.
Wow, I didn't know that. No whammies.
Big bucks, no whammies, no whammies.
Mike, Gerry, anything else?
Was this the year the Glow Friends came out, or was that 86?
This is Glow Friends.
What was that?
Mm-hmm. This is Glow Friends. They came out.
Glow
the Glow
Friends
Friends
was 85?
Christmas.
Okay,
I'm about
that's
to record
such
on that
wacky...
tomorrow night.
Oh yeah. Oh, I still have a glowworm. It's in my son's room. He's asleep, but I have my glowworm from like 1983. This was a Christmas. They had a voice of Carol O'Connor as Santa Claus, and then Sally Struthers as this evil like winter witch or something who's trying to kidnap him, and all the Glow Friends help save him by everybody glow. They sing a song, everybody glow, to make the ice cage that Santa's stuck in melt around him. Oh, it's It's so silly.
Yeah. Gerry, any
Yeah.
other things you could think of?
Yeah, the only thing that sticks out for me is actually a song, "Merry Christmas, Everyone" from Shakin' Stevens, which was a UK #1, actually written in '84, was going to be released in '84, and then Band-Aid happened, and Last Christmas happened, so he released it in '85. Not popular here in the States at all, but after listening to it and covering it, I mean, it's like, it's one of my favorite Christmas
Is it the one that's like,
songs now.
so here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun? That one?
No, it's
Okay.
the
Okay. I'm like, that's got to be older than 85.
no. It's the let's see, I don't now. I'm forgetting the words. Let's see, snow is falling, friends are calling,
Oh, yeah.
children
Yeah.
playing, and having fun. That one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, oh
yeah,
man, it's
yeah,
so good.
you can keep that.
It's like a weird rockabilly, because the '80s, the '50s were huge in the '80s, so it was a
Okay.
Back to the Future taught me that. So it was kind of that style, but no, it was yeah. That's the only other thing that really stands out to me from '85.
So, what's next? Well, of course, I've already started working on it, doing my research. But Christmas, the year in Christmas, 1984 is coming up next. I
Nice.
think I'm hoping sometime in maybe October. We'll see. Maybe to November. I'll try my best here. But 84. Any thoughts? Because I'm going to bring you guys back for whenever I release this one.
Okay.
What do you remember of anything you remember in '84?
Gremlins.
I knew
Yeah.
you were going to say Gremlins.
The Christmas Carol with George C. Scott came out in 1980.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Released
The big one?
theatrically in the UK. Yeah.
Fraggle Rock had a Christmas special in 1984
Oh,
that
I love
very much.
Fraggle Rock. I love Fraggle
Yeah.
Rock. Yeah.
You can't do that on television, I believe, was the Christmas
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. I'm actually
Yeah,
covering that this
Yeah.
week.
Was
Yeah.
I'm gonna put
that?
that
I
on
think
this episode.
Invasion USA was '84 as well.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this special from 1984 starring Mr. T and Emmanuel
Yes.
Lewis.
Yeah.
Is I
It's a
only
gem.
discovered it in like a few years ago, but it is amazing.
Okay,
Yes.
well, let's not go too far into it because we're going to be
no.
talking about this in a few months. But yes, that is definitely going to be, I think, our top one that we're going to talk about because there is something about that episode, that special, that is just magical and weird.
Yeah.
And, it's
What
pure
Mr. T's earnest
80s.
is, you know?
He's always earnest.
Yeah, but but like I think that's what makes him endearing is like he just has this like authenticity that stands. I don't know.
Well, I kept
Maybe.
you guys long enough, but before we end this, Gerry, where can people find you? What you have coming up?
TotallyRadChristmas.com. I have a ton of stuff that I can't even remember at the moment because I'm trying to pre-record everything since my busy season is coming up. But yeah, Band-Aid 2. I got something on Band-Aid 2. By the time this, this is live. So yeah,
This is live
tomorrow,
now.
my Teenage Mutant
It's
Ninja
live,
Turtles
pal.
episode is coming out tomorrow. Yeah, I got the Glow Friends, like I mentioned, and a few other things here and there. So yeah.
Cool. Mike?
You can find the Advent Calendar House at adventcalendar.house. I won't have any new episodes until December, but I'll have them cooking between now and then. So I mentioned I'm doing You Can't Do That on Television. That's a sneak peek. So
Nice.
fun stuff
Awesome.
coming up.
Cool. And Tim?
80sflickflashback.com is the website. You can go there and listen to all the episodes. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We just wrapping up our action-packed August, where I decided to do all action movies of action stars of the 80s. So we did Delta Force with Chuck Norris. We did Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren. We did Tango and Cash. We just dropped Cyborg, which is sort of Masters of the Universe Part 2 in some places.
Technically, it is. Yeah.
Technically. And then we wrapping it up with The Running Man, which will come out this coming Friday. So finishing off strong. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, hey guys, I kept you guys for an hour and a half. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully everyone watching enjoyed this as well. And like I said, you can remember if you click and like and subscribe onto my channel, and make sure you follow it, because if you like the year in Christmas 1985, which seems to be what people liked, you're going to like 1984 as well. That's coming out, but I also have a new video coming out, hopefully within the next 7 days, finding some locations in New York. I went on vacation. I took my Talk Boy, and I found a few locations. So
Nice.
it was a lot of fun. So if you know what I'm talking about, make sure you guys subscribe and check that out. Check out all these guys' podcasts. I listen to all of them when I have time. They're all fun. Always talking about 80s, which is why I have you guys on. But in the meantime, everyone have a good night. And remember, I'm the Christmas aficionado. Stay off the naughty list.